This Monday will mark 100 years since one of the worst acts of racist violence in U.S. history. The Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma was once a thriving black community, but in 1921, a white mob burned it to the ground. Hundreds were killed, and no one was ever charged with any crimes. Danya Bacchus takes a look at what was lost and shares her own family's ties to the deadly tragedy.
It's hard to put a price tag on all that was lost in Tulsa, Oklahoma's Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street, between May 31st and June 1st, 1921. White mob violence destroyed nearly every building, including my family's Dreamland Theater. The exact number of the dead, still unknown to this day, because the bodies of those killed were buried in mass graves.
There was no way to account for or provide recompense for the lives lost and the trauma that was suffered.
Black residents, including my family, filed more than $1 million in insurance claims. All of the claims were denied.
They had followed sort of the dream of American entrepreneurship that had been taken from them in this brutal act of racist violence.
Victor Lukerson is a journalist and author researching the Tulsa Race Massacre.
And they still sort of thought or hoped that the law would ultimately provide them some level of recompense. When that did not happen,
the courts decided insurance companies did not have to pay because of a clause saying they weren't responsible for loss caused by a riot. Just like the lawsuits were dismissed, so was any memory of the massacre.
When did you first learn about our family history?
I believe I may have been 6 or 7 years old.
My cousin, Charles Christopher, grew up in Tulsa. His mother and my grandfather were siblings, children of W.D. Williams, a massacre survivor.
And then did you start questioning, like, what is this? Did you have the conversation with your mother then about what happened?
She never did really discuss it at all. It was all kind of buried under the carpet.
Was it talked about in the community at all?
It wasn't talked about whatsoever.
In the black community, it said the pain was too deep and there was fear it could happen again.
In white Tulsa, the story of the massacre was intentionally suppressed for more than 50 years.
Scott Ellsworth is a Tulsa native and historian.
The white daily newspapers, the Tribune and the World, went out of their way never to mention it. Official records disappeared.
100 years later, the race massacre's history is now in the forefront, and the important story of resilience and rebuilding is being told. Danya Bacchus, CBS News, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Well, later today, our Tanya Rivero will be speaking with a descendant of the Tulsa Race Massacre who is featured in the documentary about the Greenwood District. The director of the documentary, titled Descended from the Promised Land, will also be joining them, so you can stream that conversation in our 1 p.m. hour.